an Empire Boxing and Unlearning Network production.
Welcome to another episode of the Empire Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, and we are here with someone that is going to, well, it blew my mind when I learned that this human was even interested in talking to me. None other than Mr. McDojo himself, Rob from @McDojo Life. And if you don't follow this account, you need to, like right now, like press pause, get your phone, follow the account because it is incredible. The collation of tomfuckery that this incredible page has. And Rob's going to talk to us about all the things like where it began, himself through martial arts, and the curation of this page, the documentary he's working on. And we could not be more excited to talk to Rob. So Rob, thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm stoked to be here, man. Let's talk shop. I love martial arts in general. I started when I was 12. I've been doing this for 25 years of my life. I've never taken really any long breaks. I've always been a part of it in some way, shape, or form. I started because I was getting a living shit beat out of me in school. I was born with a cleft lip and palate, so I was picked on and teased quite a bit. One day I got jumped outside of gym class. A friend of mine who was late to the class, thanks, Dick, you could have showed up on time and helped me out, but he winds up
Dick, where were you?
Yeah, what the hell, dude? I thought we were cool, man. But at the time, he was an acquaintance. We weren't even like real close, but he walked over, he picked me up, he helped me to the nurse's office. My glasses are busted up. I still have like a tattoo on my finger a little bit from when I got stabbed with a pencil from one of the kids. It was pretty brutal. Two teachers.
Kids are shitty.
Yeah,
they can
no
be
shit.
so shitty.
I thought like I was just trying to basically school was like me trying to get through prison. I'm just trying to make it to like
try not to get shanked in the bathroom in grade
I'm not
school.
trying to get. I got fucking stabbed with a pencil, so I did get shanked.
Jeez.
I mean, it sucked. So he walks me to the nurse's office and he hands me a card and it was for a free trial martial arts class and he says, "You need this." It's the only thing we said to each other. I took it to my mom that night. I said, "Hey, Mom, I'd really like to do this." She didn't let me do any sports because she was worried that my surgeries would get messed up if I got hit in the face,
Right.
Which, fair enough. So that night, I asked her if I could do that, and then she said maybe, which is not something my mom says. The next month was actually my birthday, and she had given me one present, and it was an envelope. I opened it up, and it was a contract for an entire year of martial arts classes. It was paid in full.
Let's go, Mom.
Yeah, that's when I started. Never stopped ever since.
Now, what was that? Was that like Taekwondo? Did you begin in karate? What kind of martial arts were you learning at the time?
I started in karate. It was a freestyle karate, so it was very much like a Joe Louis, Benny the Jet, or Kides, Bill Wallace type karate. It was more geared towards kickboxing. There was no katas. We never did that. Everything was technique application.
Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Benny the Jet, I haven't heard someone quote that name in a long time. Growing up, my dad knew Benny through, I think, associations with the Calgary Boxing Club. The guy was a legend. Back then, it was Benny and Mike Miles that were kind of in that, Mike Miles in the kickboxing scene that were sort of the guys to be, Now, are you Canadian by chance? Or are you from America? Okay.
No, I'm from Florida. I am literally Florida man. So that is me.
And that's where you're based currently too. You're kind of born and raised sort of thing?
Absolutely love it here. I've been all over the world, luckily, because of martial arts, and there's no other place I'd rather be than in Florida.
So what was the evolution then from coming into karate, learning that style? What other martial arts have you dipped in, and where how did your passion sort of start to snowball?
Well, I started in karate, and I did my first competition literally a month into training, because the only reason I trained was because I wanted to defend myself. And the best way to learn how to defend yourself, put yourself in a pressure cooker. Put yourself under pressure, see if it works. So I started competing about a month in, and then after a while, I was like, you know what? I'm really enjoying this. I'm doing well at competition, but this isn't really like full contact. I was like, I need something more raw. So I started doing boxing matches at a local nightclub called Plush at 15. The only reason I was allowed to
a nightclub. At 15.
Yeah, we actually have them all. Yeah, I have all of them. They were recorded like every night. So the only reason I was allowed to fight in this particular nightclub was because my instructor was a promoter. And somehow I convinced my mom to sign the waiver. He told me like, yo, you can fight, but you have to leave immediately after your first fight, which eventually turned into, you can stay all night if you help me. Yeah, well, it never became that. But eventually he let me stay all night. So I boxed there. I was a 6-0 amateur boxer.
Wow.
then 4-2 amateur kickboxer. Then I was on an international kickboxing team for 2 years called Team Full Circle, where we traveled internationally, did kickboxing tournaments, which I never count those on a record, but we did like hundreds of those because we fought like every weekend. We did a local, state, national, international, and that was our month. And then after that, I started jiu-jitsu. So I'm a purple belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I've been doing that now for about a decade, so that means I really suck at jiu-jitsu. And and now I've been doing McDojo Life and business consulting now for about a decade.
Sick. Now I just want to highlight Mom, because Mom started with an envelope, paid for a year, and then slowly just put her seatbelt on as she watched you just catapult through the martial arts world, fighting in nightclubs at 15. Like, your mom must just have been like, all right, okay, I support you.
Yeah, like my mom watched my entire life, my entire career. She's only watched me fight one time, which was at that nightclub. And I think she actually showed up about the time I was 17 fighting there. But before that, like, we had 2-on-2 fights. I posted one of the 2-on-2 fights that I had in that nightclub on my YouTube. And so, like, it was like a wild, wild west. Literally anyone can sign up the night up. There were people who were drunk signed up. If you just agreed to fight someone else and you agreed to whatever rules you agreed to, you can just fight each other. Like, we had one of the rules was called Thunderdome rules. Yeah, I fucking loved it, man.
Amazing.
Like, one of the fights, people would like set their drinks on the ring, and I would like step back, and as I went to go step back, I'd put my foot in someone's drink. It's a smoker. It was straight up smoker, but she watched once, and man, she told me after that fight, it was like so bloody. She was like, I'm never doing this again. Never coming back again. And I was like, that's fair. She tried once.
Oh, bless her. That's so funny. I love that. I literally have a visual of you stepping back into someone's like rum and coke in this like dingy, but like super high energy nightclub, bunch of kids just taking each other's teeth out. I love this.
No,
amazing.
There was no other kids. I was literally the only kid. Like, it was a 21 and up club. Yeah. The first guy I fought was 35 years old. I was 15.
So this like, I mean, like, that takes some sort of internal savagery. Was that forged in those grade school years where you're like, it can't be worse than this, so I might as well learn how to be proficient and then just send it? Where does this come from in you?
Oh, I mean, I guess it's like a training camp. If anybody's ever been through like your standard 8-week training camp, you understand that fucking sucks. There's nothing worse than your training camp. By the time you get to the fight, you're excited to fight one human being.
Yeah, you're like,
because your whole stable of fighters, they've been beating the shit out of you the entire time. You weren't able to eat the way you want. You couldn't go out and hang out with your homies. All you could do is wake up, drag your ass to the gym, work out, and get the shit beat out of you all the way until it's time to actually fight another human being. But that was just life for me. Every day I woke up, it fucking sucked. I had to go to school. I was going to get picked on. I was going to get teased. What was the worst that was going to happen to me? What, you're going to beat me up? Like, why do I give a fuck? I get beat up every day in school. So going to a nightclub to fight another human being where I have a chance and some rules, fuck, I'll take that all day.
That's so rad. Now, okay, so let's talk about McDojo Life, and how did that begin? Where did that start? What did you see that pissed you off or made you laugh? And it sort of like expanded into this incredible, social media giant that it is today. Where did that start?
A conversation. I was at the time a striking coach for the Jiu-Jitsu Academy that I trained at. I also was a program director, and I was a kids coach. So I taught a lot of kids Jiu-Jitsu and taught their striking program. And when I was there one day for a noon class, I was just doing paperwork. I wasn't even supposed to teach that day. My boss, who never calls in sick, called in sick, was like, yo, man, would you do me a favor and would you teach this class? I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I taught the class, and then when everything was done, we all just kind of stood around. We were shooting the shit. And then we got on the subject of McDojos, which has been a term that's been around well before I was ever even in martial arts. And then everyone left except for one guy. And I'll never forget this because I don't remember ever seeing this guy again. But it was his literal first official martial arts class ever. He had done his trial, and this is his first as a member. And he goes, hey, man, I'm a little embarrassed. You guys were talking about a McDojo. He goes, I don't know what that is. Could you explain that to me? And so I did. And he asked me a very basic question. He goes, why doesn't anybody do anything about that? And I was like, fuck, man, that's a good question. I was like, well, there is no regulating body to martial arts. There is no standard in what it takes to open up a school. There is nobody's going to come in and stop you if you lied. If you're charismatic enough, even if you've never trained a day in your life, you basically could run a martial arts school and get away with it. So I couldn't stop thinking about that. Went home that night and I was like, fuck, that's a good question. So the next day I started McDojo Life.
That's insane. I think like, I see little pieces of that, coming into even the training world right now, with coaches, strength coaches, S&C, movement coaches. People are making up disciplines now. Like it's awesome. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm a movement coach. What the hell's that? Or like functional fitness even. That's a really hot topic. Like, what does that even mean? And how all of a sudden you're just going to make up your own PhD and say you graduated and this is what you're going to do and you're going to steal people's money. And then the boxing space too. I get clients coming in all the time. We're like, oh yeah, I boxed for like 5-6 years, and you see them and they have no feet. And I'm like, who stole your money? You've been robbed for 5 years. And I was actually having a really interesting conversation today, and I love like your perspective on it, was this idea that, specifically in boxing, let's say, because I love jujitsu, because it is, I obviously don't have an experience in karate and taekwondo and things like that you have, but in jujitsu, it's the ultimate equalizer. You can't really bullshit it. But in boxing, it's like the one sport that's been sort of bastardized into a fitness modality where people get the green light from the people that adopted as fitness modality boxing coaches to completely disregard the context and the technicalities of boxing to sell it to people who, I don't want to fight, I don't want to spar, I just want to hit stuff. So you completely have the green light to disregard the context of it, and I just find that so interesting. No other sport is like that. If you think about like football, basketball, soccer, you don't go to like the soccer studio to do fitness soccer to music and black lights. But in boxing, it's been totally accepted. And in fact, it's blown up as an industry and people are raking in cash. And, and people like myself are sitting there just going like, damn, like it's shameless. Like, where do you think that began? And how do we get ahead of that and educate people? Because I do think a lot of people don't know what they don't know, to your point about this guy that you spoke to.
I think that half the battle is the martial arts industry in itself, no matter what the combat sport is, whether it be taekwondo, karate, jiu-jitsu, boxing, whatever it is very self-deprecating. The major issue is ego inside the industry. It is the biggest issue, as a matter of fact. The status quo of martial arts is that if you don't do what I do, or if you don't do what I think is legitimate, you're bullshit. The problem is that's a really fucking that's a really fucking stupid way of looking at it. That's not how that works. What we should do as coaches is understand the needs of our clientele and give them the need that they're asking for. If someone shows up to your martial arts program, even a boxing studio, and their entire goal is to lose 30 pounds, but that's not what you're in it for, and you look at that person and you go, well, that's a bullshit goal. If you're not learning how to box, then you shouldn't be here. Well, aren't we doing a disservice to our clientele by saying that their needs don't matter? That's not what our job is as coaches. We can turn them away if we say that's not what I'm qualified to do, but what we shouldn't turn them away is because, oh, I don't like that idea. If someone wants to go to a cardio kickboxing class, they want to lose 30 pounds and they lose 30 pounds, who am I to say that their ideology is bullshit? That's not how that works. As a good coach, I'm going to look at each individual student and go, what is your goal? You want to lose 30 pounds? All right, you don't want to fight. Then why am I going to shove someone who doesn't want to fight in a sparring match when that's not what they were here for? That is a disservice I would be doing to a student. If they want to lose 30 pounds, my goal now for them is to help them lose 30 pounds. And if turning on a black light and some strobes and having them head a bag, as long as they're doing it correctly so they don't jack up their body and their shoulder, I can teach them both. I can teach them how to properly box and get them to lose 30 pounds without putting them through the ringer of having to worry about the concussion they don't want to have.
I totally agree. Like, I think it has to be, I think it can be mutually exclusive is sort of my, like my thoughts on it too. It's like, you can have fun and sweat and have the appropriate dosing of intensity, frequency, and technicality whilst having fun. It doesn't have to be separate things. But
Absolutely.
and also, no judgment. Like, if you want to go into a spin class and tap it back, power to you. I've been to one. It was actually pretty fun. But do I think that is superior to good technical coaching from a movement and biomechanics standard of just teaching people how to move their bodies correctly through space and time, giving them like bomb-proof bodies for injury and truly like being strong as your insurance policy, on your body. So I don't think it trumps it. I think it can be mutually exclusive with it. And I think what bugs me is that it's sort of seen like as a, oh, no, just this, and I'm like, well, it should exist almost harmoniously, to your point. But I like what you said about, getting the ego out of there as well. And then being able to look at it objectively as like, what's your duty as a coach? And I think that's cool because it is easy to get salty about it in the industry too, and cast judgment where it's really not your place to do so.
And it kind of eats the industry alive. Like the status quo, like when people hear literally the word McDojo, they automatically have certain keywords that pop up that literally have nothing to do with what we should have problems with. Like, for instance, they go, oh, that's too expensive. They're a McDojo. They charge too much. Well, cost is subjective to the individual. If the it's too much for who? Because it's too much for you, it doesn't mean it's too much for somebody else. And if they're literally making money doing what they love, who am I to bash that? The other one is like, oh, they just push promotions on them. They just give them belts. Like, well, let's get this straight. So is that the standard? Well, at that point, we're saying skill is the standard for promotion. Skill is not a standard for promotion. The only standard for promotion literally should be, are you better than you were yesterday? The only competition you should have in martial arts about promotions and getting better is you versus you. Like, of course, we can say, hey, man, well, that guy got his black belt in like 3 years. That's bullshit. People laugh at that, right? But let's give an example. BJ Penn got his black belt in 3 years. So do we laugh at him? Oh, we don't. Well, it's not because he got his black belt in 3 years. It's because he did the art other people respect, not because of time. So that time thing is bullshit because skill is also subjective. Some people can get that good in that amount of time. It's been proven before. I mean, so I think that what we need to do is... Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, you see these young purple belts like J-Rod or whatever, like just destroying and mowing through brown belts and black belts. Like you're right. You're 100% right.
Like when I started the page, in order to define or in order to fix a problem, you typically have to define it. So like, what is the issue? Well, I started looking into it, and over the years, I've been able to come up with a set basis of 5 rules of what actually constitutes and makes a McDojo. And I would be curious to hear if you agree.
Hit me.
All right, so this one's going to be a shocker. It always is for everybody, but it's a rampant issue in the martial arts industry. Pedophiles. I don't think pedophiles should be allowed in the martial arts industry. I don't think that we should allow people who raped kids to be allowed to be in charge of discipline and integrity and honor and teaching people martial arts, because clearly they have none of that.
Yeah, that's not a head scratcher on my end.
Pretty simple, right? Like, and what's amazing is people will complain about how long it takes someone to get a belt, and you'll see people complaining all about that all day long, right? Taekwondo's bullshit, karate's bullshit, go do jujitsu, but they'll completely ignore that there is a record number of pedophiles in our industry. I literally do a story about one pedophile at least every week in the industry, and yet no one complains about it. No one talks about it. Everyone kind of ignores it. Why? Strange. The next one is unsafe training practices and cult-like behavior. Like, for instance, you see this a lot in the Middle East, especially in terms of boxing, where you'll have people who are lined up with their hands behind their back while their coach tees off on their head, right? That's stupid as fuck. That doesn't help you. As a matter of fact, we all know what that does. It leads to traumatic brain injuries. It leads to CTE. It leads to basically you being easier to be knocked out. Doesn't make you harder to be knocked out because you can't condition your brain, because that's fucking dumb, right? But cult-like behavior you'll see in jiu-jitsu. You'll see like a term called a crianche. And a crianche in jiu-jitsu is based off of a soap opera character in Brazil who was really sneaky and like savage and a traitor. People will call students who just go to another martial arts school for like a seminar a traitor. They'll tell them, you can't go train in another facility. Like, bitch, fuck you. I'm paying you for a service. You can't tell me what to do outside this facility. I pay you, you give me the service, and then you fuck off, and then I go live my life. Like, that's a cult. So, that's rule number 2.
Not a head scratcher either, really.
Rule number 3, lying about your belt rank or your fight record. Those are things people had to earn. When you step into the ring, you and another person shared the most intimate honest moment of your life with another human being. You cannot lie to someone when you are fighting them. It is impossible. The truth always comes out. So whenever people who have never fought before watch people fight, something that I've always heard over the years is, why do they hug afterwards? Isn't that so weird? It's not if you've done it, because you and that person know just how special that moment was that you had together. It is a complete moment of honesty that no one else who's ever actually gotten to who've never been in a fist fight will ever know. They will never know what that's like. And so for someone to take that moment and bastardize it by stealing it and saying that they had a fight record they did not have, fuck them. Also, side note, usually when you sign up at a martial arts facility, that is the first conversation you have with your instructor. What are your credentials? And they say, oh, well, I fought here and I did this. If they're willing to lie to your face when they first met you, everything else they are probably going to say to you is probably also bullshit.
I've never understood. I've encountered this before too. And sometimes I find it can go hand in hand with a bit of imposter syndrome. Like, for example, if someone is entering, I'm just going to use boxing as an example, the boxing space as a coach, but has actually no experience in boxing, the sport. I have run into this where I'm assuming that it must come from a bit of imposter syndrome. Like there's an insecurity about their credential, and then you get the lie. And I've never understood this because on one hand, it's really easy to find out that you were lying. You can look it up. It's really not that hard. For example, if that person finds himself in that scenario you just described, it's pretty quick. You figure like you have no idea what you're doing, right? So, okay. So why lie from that side? The second is if you feel like you need to lie because you feel like you don't have enough credential, there are ways that you must kind of invest in yourself and educate yourself. And let's just face it, not all athletes are fantastic coaches and not all fantastic coaches are excellent athletes. You don't have to be both. You can exist in the industry, do your job, create more athletes, breed more champions, and not have a 40-2 record. That's fine. So then it comes down to what experiences have you invested in? What education have you invested in? How many hours have you put in? And if you have all that, then you shouldn't feel the need to lie. Like, and I've come across this. So I find that just such a bizarre thing. And you're right. It goes deeper. It's like, if I'm trusting you as my instructor, I'm about to sign the year contract with you, and that's our first interaction is you lying, then whatever's going to come is going to be just, like a train wreck.
I agree. And like, if you look at two of the most famous coaches on the planet right now, look at Freddie Roach. Yeah. Did he have like the greatest, most incredible boxing record on the planet? No, because if he did, he wouldn't be known as Freddie Roach the coach. He'd be known as Freddie Roach the boxer.
Absolutely.
Or how about John Danaher here?
I was just going to say, what about Danaher?
Yeah, like literally a fucking genius of our time, like a martial artist of rock.
Yeah.
He knows how to make champions. That's for damn sure. Like, so there's something going on in his brain that maybe his body does not have the exact same capacity to do on that level, but he knows how to teach people. And that's an incredible skill to have. There's nothing wrong with that. But I only had like two more rules left. One, the next one is kind of common sense, but it's actually worldwide, which is crazy because I've never run out of these. No touch knockouts and mislabeling technique. You can't knock someone out with your mind. It's not real. Fuck, I wish I'd quit all the rest of this shit. You think I want to fucking run 2 miles? No, I want to knock people out fucking like, Professor knockout. Xavier style.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just fucking mutant style. But you can't. But all over the world, there are different cultures that practice the same thing. So there's Chi, C-H-I, Ki, K-I, Ki, Q-I. There's Tanaga Dalam. There's the Holy Spirit. There's all these different practices all over the world, which always have some type of root in religion in one way or another, that believe that you can just force shit out of your body and all of a sudden you can affect another human being that way. You fucking can't. It is not real. You can convince people that it is real, but it's so much easier to fool people than it is to convince people they've been fooled. Mm-hmm. So like people all over the world look at that shit and they go, oh, that's fucking ridiculous. How can anyone believe that? But they have to remember, in some of those cultures, especially in Indonesia, they've been born and raised that way. One of the most horrific things I ever saw, this is going to be fairly graphic, I apologize. I got sent a video of an 8-year-old kid slitting his throat and killing himself because he believed that he had this supernatural power in Indonesia. Due to a practice in Indonesia they call dibas, which is like self-mutilation without harm. Now, anybody who's seen this before knows that that is a magic trick. But that child was raised in such a way to believe that this is real, didn't understand that the adults aren't using real swords, they're using fake props.
Devastating.
And picked up a real one and killed himself. That's the type of shit I try to fucking stop. That's why I do my job. Because people seem to ignore it because it's funny on the surface. When you dig just a little past the surface, like a fucking scratch-off ticket, you'll see these people don't have the winning numbers. These people are being taken advantage of by gurus and cult leaders. Also, that second caveat of that rule, mislabeling technique, goes into what you were saying, which is if I go to a cardio kickboxing class, I should expect a cardio kickboxing curriculum. If I have a good coach, yes, he will make me technically good at hitting the bag. That will not make me an actual boxer. That will make me good at hitting the bag. It might even make me look good hitting mitts. That doesn't mean I'm a good fighter. When a coach mislabels that and tries to give you a false sense of security by telling you now, yes, man, if I put you in the ring, you'd be fantastic, that's a fucking lie. Because that's not a stimulus you are used to. You are not used to getting a hit in the face. You are not used to hitting other people, which anybody who's ever been a boxing coach knows that off the bat, a lot of people do have a hard time hitting people in the face. They'll almost avoid it. And so you have to train them that it's okay to do this thing. So mislabeling is extremely dangerous. And one of the worst people about this that's in the industry today is a guy named Dale Brown. Dale Brown, he's the big, strong security guy, looks like he's wearing a headpiece all the time, got the weird Apple Watch on his wrist, right? Detroit Urban Survival Training. That guy has so many mislabeled techniques that if you actually dissected what he's saying, he is literally lying to people, and he's trying to lean on the fact that he lives in Detroit as a security guard, that he is some type of expert. It's bullshit. It's false. It's wrong. But people just, he's in Detroit. He runs a security company, so we're just going to listen to him. It's the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I got to know what's the last rule here.
Shady business practices. So if I go to a martial arts school, and that martial arts school is run by a white belt, and that martial arts school is charging me $1 million a month. If I go there and the guy goes, hey, I'm a white belt, and I go, how long you been training? He goes, about a week. And I go, how much does it cost? About $1 million. Are you very good? Not really. Do you know what you're doing? No. And I pay for that? That's my fucking fault.
That's on you.
That guy, he was honest. Now, if I go and all of a sudden they're like, it's going to cost you this much, but then all of a sudden there are all these additional fees, that's not on me. I was lied to. If I go and I'm going, you know what, I don't want to have to wear a standard uniform. I want to wear whatever I want. And the school goes to me and they say, hey, we have a standardized uniform, and you don't like that? They were honest with you. That's not a McDojo. They were telling you the truth. Go somewhere else. But if you decide to stay there, don't bitch and moan when you have to follow the rules that you already agreed to. So the shady business practices, I have an example of a school that was actually here in town. It was called 5-Star Martial Arts. And the guy who ran it, actually, I'm not going to say his name, but the guy who ran it, he was in jail in and out all the time. Like, he had a track record of being just a piece of shit human being.
Real stand-up community leader.
Like an upstanding citizen, someone you would expect to be a martial arts instructor. Well, that guy, when people were late on their payments, was notorious for showing up to their actual homes and strong-arming them for the money.
No.
So he would physically threaten them. He'd be like, yo, where's my money? Be like, what are you talking about? He goes, he'd fuck them up and then take it. It's like, that's shady business practice. It's not how good businesses run.
It's like the Wild West. Like, it's just a free-for-all.
Well, who's going to stop them? What's the rule? Like, for instance, if I went to a martial arts school right now, any martial arts school, and I said, is everyone here locally and federally background checked? From what I've seen, 90% of schools would say no. Mm-hmm. Well, why do you think pedophilia is so rampant when the average doesn't even care to background check their employees? You know, that's a ridiculous. Like, how about CPR and first aid certified? Yeah. That's almost fucking free. And people don't require their coaches to do it, even though this is a very strenuous exercise, whatever it may be. And someone goes in there, they have some type of issue, you should be able to at least do CPR. How about how many schools don't have a defib unit on site? I have seen video after video online of people having fucking heart attacks or having some type of major issue in the school where someone happened to have a defib unit and saved their life. Like, wow. I understand that might be an additional cost, but you're dealing with something that's very physical. People might get hurt. So you should have that standardized CPR and defib unit. If you don't, you're really asking for issues.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting you said that. I actually never thought about those two as just a bare minimum, which is crazy because I would judge a strength gym or a regular, you know, let's say fitness facility. I would judge their safety practices. But not once have I ever thought about when I go to jiu-jitsu every day. I've never thought to myself, what is their safety practices? I wonder what standards they have to uphold. So that's really interesting. Why are we not looking at it the same way? And I mean, I'm guilty of that as well. Walking in as a consumer, not asking those kind of questions or even having those expectations is like somehow it's different, but it's not.
Well, you know, we touched on this for a second ago, but we talked about like the type of standards in which we operate our facilities. Like we talked about like, oh, well, you know, someone goes into a cardio kickboxing class, for instance, they should be taught still proper stance, proper footwork, how to hit the bag right. Because let's be honest, if they're throwing hooks improperly, they could really fuck up their shoulder, mess up their elbow. Yeah. If they're not throwing or like even bad footwork can eventually lead to them fucking up their ankle because they tripped, because they don't know where their feet are supposed to be, you know, not knowing how to wrap their hands properly, which is another thing if they plan on hitting the bag full blast, which you shouldn't do all the time anyway, but if you're going to, you should wrap your hands. So all of these little things, but another thing that's kind of overlooked in our industry is so many people talk about tough love. Like, the industry itself has this weird hard-on about making everybody as tough as humanly possible. They don't give a fuck about their safety as long as they're tough. So I'll give you a story. I got plenty of them, but this is just one. There was a child in Taiwan. The child was only in his second judo class ever. His uncle was in attendance, literally taking pictures and filming the class. His uncle. The judo instructor that was there was a very high-level judo instructor. The kid, during his second class only, was thrown, and during that throw, started to cry. The judo instructor was like, fuck you, you're going to continue to do it anyway. Then he started showing all the signs of a concussion. He said, I'm dizzy. He said, I'm nauseous. He literally threw up. He literally said, I have a headache. He saw all the signs of a major concussion, blurred vision. All of these things he explained to the coach. Now again, the uncle, watching the entire thing, is leaving it in the hands of the coach. Because the coach is supposed to be the professional. He knows what's going on, and we want to make our kid tough. Well, he made all the other kids in that class throw that kid repeatedly. That kid got put in a coma. That kid was in a coma for more than 3 months before he passed away and died. The adults were in the room. They watched this happen, and they encouraged it because of tough love. That's fucking bullshit. What we should care about more than making our people tough is we should understand statistics and educate ourselves as fucking coaches. Statistically, anyone who joins any martial arts studio ever will last only a year. Technically between 8 months to a year and a half. How do we know this? Companies like Rainmaker, Perfect Mind, MindBody, who are all martial arts softwares, keep track of these statistics for us. So that means if somebody's only, on average, that means most people who join are only there for a year. Why are we so much putting all this emphasis on making them tough? Well, unless we already know as coaches, unless they continue their education, that shit goes away. So they won't be tough after they've stopped for like 3 months and started eating fucking Twinkies and watching Netflix all goddamn day. All of that will go away. So what is our actual goal? Our goal should be give a fuck about the student's goal. The moment we start doing that as coaches, we can actually make this industry successful. We can keep students longer than an average of a year. We can keep students out of the hospital, out of a coma, out of being fucking dead because of our personal ego.
Well, it's crazy. Even just like, let's say you don't give a fuck about people's goals or whatever. You're just some salty coach. Like, it is on the very bottom level counterproductive as a business model. Like,
agreed.
You don't get to keep anybody. No one has longevity. You're constantly fishing in the same pond of whatever city, town you're in. And you've got the average of 6 months per person that signs up, maybe a year. As a business model, it just doesn't even make sense. Never mind, like, you know, never mind what it should be, like altruistically, like caring about people, and that should be the motivation. But it's insane. It's insane to me too to think about that. Like, at the very minimum, as a business person, you should be thinking, how do I, not just where do I get new clients from? Because that's actually a really difficult like road to constantly walk. And as soon as you enter an entrepreneurial space as like a brick and mortar, you're offering a discipline, that is your forever struggle. So the only way to combat that is that really focus on how you actually keep people, because that'll minimize how frantic you need to be finding new blood constantly. If you have good, solid base of members that are consistently coming, you know,
I agree.
It's insane.
So sorry, my dog is barking and I don't know why. All right. I apologize, but I'm in my home alone and my dog's barking and he never does.
Do you want to go look just in case it's someone coming to get you? Finally,
absolutely. If you give me a minute.
Definitely. So for our listeners to, you know, I guess, well, we're going to ask Rob about this too, but I guess he gets death threats all the time. So we got to make sure that this is not one of those situations. Can you imagine on my podcast? All of a sudden we hear some like judo throws and like the wall comes down. That would be amazing. I mean, not amazing at all, but like, wow.
Yo, sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was thinking like, how viral would it go right now if like all of a sudden like the wall comes. Yeah. Like I would just be over here like, oh my God. And actually that kind of like leads me into what I wanted to ask you about too. You know, you were saying, so this pursuit, you know, this passion, this drive doesn't come without its risks. So you must be loved by many and hated by some. And with that must come some interesting DMs, I'm guessing, some letters with some cutout little newspaper letters. And what kind of experiences you had with some of these people?
Well, I mean, it's not what I expected when I started this, because when I started it, it was just a fucking hobby, man. Like, I didn't think that it was going to be a full-time career. I didn't think that, I thought I would run out of content within a year. And I think most people also expected the same. What I realized very quickly dealing with this is I'm not dealing with like fraud martial artists. I'm dealing with cults. And when we started filming our documentary, I got to talk with somebody who was, there's a gentleman named Bishop Barron. And Bishop Barron is considered the second most famous Catholic in the world underneath the Pope.
Wow. Okay.
His assistant, the guy that's like right under him, we got to interview. And that particular guy is a fucking genius. And he is a cult expert, which is kind of ironic for the Catholic Church, but it depends on what your personal views are. But that dude is an actual cult expert. And so when we talked about cults in general, he started telling us like the root word of culture is cult. Like if you read culture, it starts off with cult. That's the root word. So in our culture, we're made up of a lot of different cults. Everyone automatically jumps to religion being a cult. And they only think that religion is the only cult. Excuse me, that's not how it works. You can have a cult of money. You can have a cult of politics, which we see a lot nowadays. You can have a cult of personality. You can have a cult of anything. And so martial arts is one of those things where it's a breeding ground for cults because we're giving all the tools before we ever meet anyone. When you first walk into a martial arts facility, you're automatically giving that person virtues before you've ever met them. You're giving them honor and integrity and respect, and they have to have all that because they literally have the one skill that is not respected in any other aspect of our life, which is they can beat people up good. Like, okay, so you're good at beating people up. The only other place that matters is fucking prison. That's it. Like, that is it. Like, think about a board meeting. If you're at a board meeting and you're talking about making, like, the quarterlies, and we're going, all right, man, we're in the red. How do we get to the black? And you got the CEO, you got the CFO, you got the head of marketing, all that, and we're all talking, right? And we're going, you know what? I'm having a hard time. This is stumping me. And then fucking Steve, the janitor, walks in, tattooed up to the fucking neck. So all he looks like he does is work out and fucking eat steroids all day. And people go, you know what? Hold that thought, Bob. I like what you were saying about the quarterlies, but Steve over here, he could kick our ass. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah.
No one would ever fucking do that.
Yeah,
You know why? Because beating people up is not that big of a skill. It is not that fucking handy in any other context, but when you're having to defend yourself, and when you're in competition to defend yourself, and when you're teaching people to defend themselves. That is the only time that is handy. But we put it on such a high pedestal because it's drilled into our mind from pop culture that these people have this mystique or this aura, or they're Mr. Miyagi, or they're Pai Mei, or they're the guy on the fucking mountain. It ain't feudal Japan. God damn it, we're in this new time. We're in a new era, right? We got guns. So when it comes down to it, why do we give these people such reverence? What we're doing is we're opening up a door to allow them to manipulate us before we even get to know them. Like, it just blows my mind. So I didn't understand how culty it was until I got into it. And then all of a sudden, the first couple death threats started to come. And I was like, that's fucking weird. I was like, why the fuck do you care what I have to say about your guru?
And in what form did they come? What form were these death threats?
All right, so I'll give you my first major death threat. So I was in London. I was out there. I got hired for a martial arts tournament. I got hired to teach a nunchuck seminar. And I was going to be out there for 2 weeks because I was like, if I'm going, I want to go hang out in London. That sounds fucking awesome. So I go out, and the studio that I'm teaching at, they said, hey, we have a martial arts tournament. It's a Taekwondo tournament. And it was going to be held in the YMCA in downtown in London. And it's a beautiful YMCA. It's fucking awesome down there. But they said, would you do us a favor? Would you come and support the team? And I was like, absolutely. Let's do that, right? So I'm hanging out, and then I get a message. I'm sitting in the bleachers. There's thousands of people there. I get a text message on my DMs, and it was a profile that had no profile picture. There was no posts. No one followed them. They followed no one. And all it said was what I was wearing. And I was like, oh, that's kind of fucking weird. I mean, I didn't think much of it. I just thought it was weird. But I've had weird shit like that happen before where people like took a picture of me and posted it and tagged me. And I'd be like, yo, why didn't you just come say hey? Because that's fucking weird. I've had a guy recognize me in a fucking urinal at a bathroom and wouldn't let me leave until I took a selfie. Like, I've had weird shit like that happen, so it wasn't that big of a deal. So I texted him and I was like, oh, well, you can just come over and we can chit chat. And then they started to remind me of a case that I had covered years before. So rewind years before. This is when I'm first starting McDojo Life. I don't have a lot of followers on Facebook, probably about 10,000. And someone sent me a message about a martial arts instructor who was a convicted pedophile. So they sent me the information. I confirmed that this was true. I found out that they were kind of getting around the system somehow, and they were still around children. So I did a story about this. Well, luckily enough, even though I only had 10,000 followers, those 10,000 followers were fucking savages. And they went after that guy. They went to his Google reviews. They went to his Facebook reviews. They left the link of like the report that was done about him raping the kids and shit. And they fucking 1-star reviewed his ass into oblivion. Now, you might not think that that's very powerful, but it was enough to get all of their social media removed. All of it was gone. Like, it was like over the week. I was like, holy fuck, we fucked them up. I was like, good. Yeah. So I thought, okay, this business is done.
Yeah.
Good. 1 score for the good guys, right?
Yeah. Case closed.
Well, about a year or two after that, somebody sent me another website, and it was in London. And I was like, holy shit, it's the same fucking guy. Now, what I didn't understand at the time is that you can get plea deals in some of these cases. So you don't get put necessarily on a sex offender registry forever. That's not always the case. There are stipulations in which you might be put on a registry just for a smaller amount of time. This guy took that type of plea deal. So once he was off of that registry, he had opened up his original school. Still, he raped kids, shouldn't be around kids. I don't give a fuck what registry he's on. Then he goes over to London. They have something called Safe Sport. So they will look into your background. Well, that wasn't on his resume anymore. That wasn't on there anymore. So he was now free to teach in London. He opened up a fucking school, literally changed his name. And I was like, holy fuck, it's the same guy. Do another story about the guy, that school, exact same thing. Now I have a bigger backing now. So they like really ripped into him. Again, one for the good guys. The person who messaged me during that Taekwondo tournament was one of his students. I don't know if it was a student or not. That's just how I read it. That's how it seemed. It could have been the guy, but the way that it was written was very specific, like it was a student. It was like, you're a liar. That guy never did those things. I was like, dude, then why didn't he sue me? Like, I've never been sued doing this job once. You know how fucking hard that is doing this for a decade, calling people full of shit? Not one defamation, not one slander, not one libel.
Amazing.
I got a message from a lawyer from Henzo Gracie's Academy not that long ago, and I wiped my ass with the letter and posted me wiping my ass with the letter. Because there's not shit you can do if it's true. If it's true, kiss my ass. And so, anyway, that particular person, they told me that when I left, they were going to shoot me. Now, this was strange to me because we're in London. What are the odds that they actually have a gun? I don't believe you, but I don't know where you are either. And I thought about it. I was like, would I be able to get a gun in here? I was like, maybe. I was like, well, that's fucking weird. So I like went down to some off-duty police officers that were there. I told them about the situation. I said, hey, man, this is a little weird. This is a message. They told me there's nothing they could do about it, but they did tell me that they could walk me to my car. So they did, and nothing ever happened. But ever since then, man, I don't fuck around. Like, I'm much safer about why and how I do what I do. But that was like that was probably the scariest one I ever got.
Wow, no shit. So let's kind of go into, because I'm sure you're a fascinating person. Like, I'm sure you've thought countless hours about this, but let's talk about the psychology behind these people on the tail end of the death threats conversation. So how many of these guys have you encountered that are literally just duping people for cash? Like trying to just slide one by to see what they can get from somebody who's vulnerable? And how many of these guys like believe in their core of their being that they possess magical, mystical dragon power fuckery?
Dragon Power Fuckery is going to be the name of my autobiography now, by the way. So just I think that I actually, the more I thought about it over the years, the more I think that it's actually stages. I don't think that, at first I thought they were all individual, but now that I look at it and look back and really, I've really tried to process it. And again, I could be wrong. This is just my observation over the years. I think that there are stages of this, and what I've called it, and for lack of better terminology, I'm sure that I will learn the actual terms over learning more and studying. I call it Steven Seagal syndrome. And so, like, look at Steven Seagal. Like, he's probably the best example. He's one of the best examples. He's just one that people know. So, Steven Seagal started off as a legitimate Aikido practitioner. That was his only job. He was not Steven Seagal, the blues musician. He was not Steven Seagal, the actor. He was not Steven Seagal, the lawman, or the chef from Under Siege. He was literally just Steven Seagal, Aikido guy. And for Aikido purposes and Aikido practices, he was like a hardcore Aikido guy, right? So he'd always be fucking people up when he was training with them. Well, somewhere along the line, he had like a director or producer, something like that, meet him and was taking classes from him and goes, you'd be fucking good in a movie, which never happens in real life, but it happened to him. Like a 1 in a billion shot that someone's like, you'd be good in a movie. Like, that's a fantasy, but it happened to him. So then he's like, you know what? Fuck yeah, I'd be good in a movie. Let's do that. And so he did. And his first like 3-4 movies were fucking great. No one can tell me like Above the Law, like, Hard to Kill, fucking Under Siege. You can't tell me those movies weren't great because they were fucking awesome. But the problem is that when you have that much fame and that much power and that much influence so quickly, so fast, but you don't have anybody telling you no. You don't have anybody telling you to keep yourself grounded. You don't have a real mentor. You get the same thing that, like, look at what happened with Mike Tyson. When you start getting manipulated and you had a good mentor, then you get manipulated by people like Don King, of course it's going to get to your head because they're feeding you bullshit. Steven Seagal didn't have anyone to keep him grounded. There was no customado for Steven Seagal. There was just people kissing his ass because he probably had cocaine in the 80s. So what was he doing? He was just getting a bigger and bigger ego as time would go on. And then he starts going above and beyond to do shit that no sane human being should or would do. He starts assaulting actors on set. For instance, John Leguizamo has a story about getting assaulted by Steven Seagal. He starts doing things like being accused, at least. There is no actual court case that has given him the, like, you have done this. He's not been convicted anyway of molesting women. That he has multiple cases against him. And I 100% believe those women. I believe that they were molested by Steven Seagal, but because of his position, somehow didn't get caught. And then he goes on eventually to go onto an interview and call himself God. Like, what kind of fucking psycho calls himself God? Steven Seagal does. And you know what's even more ironic is his daughter. His daughter follows my page, and I've had several conversations with his daughter. And you know what? She fucking loves that I rip into his ass. Because she knows personally that he's a giant piece of shit. So when you look at somebody like Seagal, you think, fuck, how did that happen? But when you think about it, of course it's how it happened. Like, who was there to monitor him? And then I look at all the most famous...
You're right. It's a knock-on effect.
I don't know what that is, so maybe you can help me out.
Oh, it's just, one thing knocks on to the next, and then there's, that it's just kind of like an unfolding of the phases, the spiral or the snowball. It's just exactly what you're describing.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I learned something today. I appreciate that. So when it comes to like Steven Seagal, that's like a really famous example. So a lot of people who know his career, or I was born in 85, so I saw his career unfold and shit. So a lot of people can relate to that. But what we forget is that people are people. We're all flawed. We are all fucked up in our own happy little fucked up ways. The only difference is what do we accept from people who are fucked up and what don't we accept from fucked up people. There is a line, and most people are shades of gray. There is no Pai Mei. But if you looked at like Pai Mei from Kill Bill, you would see a guy who was abusive fucking douchebag who beat the shit out of Uma Thurman in order to make her better at martial arts, right? But that guy's fucked up. But we
I mean, even Yoda was a dick.
Yeah, we accept that. Why? Because we think that we give them a pedestal to grow on, right? But we forget that, like, what if we replace Yoda with Steven Seagal? And now he's your instructor. Would you put him on the same pedestal? Well, you would if you didn't know anything about his personal life. I bet you Yoda beat the fuck out of people. I bet Yoda was a dick. He was going to bars, throwing fucking alcohol fits, like abusing women. Yoda was probably a cocksucker. But you know what? At the end of the day, we look at Yoda because we don't know anything about him personally. We don't know what Yoda was doing. He was probably smacking bitches all left and right. But we don't know that, so we give him the benefit of the doubt.
Backhand.
He said, fuck you. I guess, how does fucking Yoda talk? Smack a bitch, I must. Yoda was probably a douchebag, but at the end of the day, we don't know anything about him personally. Yeah. And so when you see people like that, it's easy to judge because we know their background shit. What about guys like George Dillman, though? Which, if anybody doesn't know who George Dillman is, very famous, probably one of the most famous martial arts frauds on the planet. He believes he can knock people out with his chi powers from across the room. He believes that he stood in Starbucks at one time and was moving people around with his mind, and they were looking back to see who was doing it. He's been quoted that, by the way.
Is this to your best guess? Is this something like schizophrenia even? Like, that's got to be clinical. That's got to be pathological on some level.
I don't think it works that way. They say anybody, like, if you torture someone long enough, anyone will snap. Like, no one can just hold out. It is impossible to just hold out for a long enough period of time. I think ego is the same way. I think that if you feed an ego long enough, eventually the lie becomes the truth. To that person, anyway. So at first, I don't think someone like George Dillman really believes that he could knock people out with his mind. But I think there was enough people around him feeding him that bullshit and not saying no that just went along with it, that eventually he's like, yeah, of course I can do this.
Okay, but so let's talk about those people then. What is their motivation? Like, did it start as a sick joke? Like it was their mate and it was just like, hey, like, should we fuck with him? And like, whoa, like these guys that are like the like ookies, for lack of a better term, to these like, these are the guys that are almost the bigger problem. If that's how the equation goes.
I don't think they are the bigger problem. I think that that's a misconception. I think that people like to blame the victim. They're victims. Don't get that twisted. Those people are victims of the cult leader. But the real problem is cognitive dissonance. And so like this is the red pill, blue pill situation. So let me give you a scenario. So let's say you're walking down a path. And as you walk down the path, you've had a very specific belief structure your entire life. You believe the sky is red, goddammit. And you believed that for 30 fucking years. The sky is red. Now, you could be colorblind. You don't know that because everyone around you has just been patronizing you saying the sky is red. Or you don't want to listen to anybody else because you know what you see with your own eyes. Your eyes say the sky is fucking red. Now, we all know that you're probably fucking colorblind and don't know what the fuck you're talking about, but you know what you see with your eyes. And your eyes see red. So as you keep walking down the path, eventually you meet a fork in the road and there's a guy standing there with literally a sheet of every reason why you're wrong. Proof, definitive evidence that nothing you are saying right now is correct. But here's the problem. If that was the only thing, you would automatically go, you know what, I'm wrong. And go down the path of, I'm changing my mind. That's not how cults work. How cults work is isolation and brainwashing. This is now your friends. These are now your family. This is now your mentorship. This is now your belief structure. And you believe that for 30 years of your life. And in order for you to go down the path of truth, you would literally have to give up all of those things to go down the path of truth. To continue the lie, you have to give up nothing. Most people will continue the lie. They have to get what harm is
like staying in the echo chamber.
Exactly. It's literally the matrix, right? Red pill, blue pill. Do you want to continue to believe the lie? Or do you want to literally give up everything you've ever known in the pursuit of truth? Most people don't have the capacity to go down the path of truth because they have so much to lose at that point.
It's so fascinating. So I think you said it was John Dillon was his last name, or the guy that you were saying
George
was in
Dillman.
Starbucks. George Dillman. Okay, so let's talk about George Dillman's, like, maybe theoretical. Maybe you know the full story. His first friend that was like, yeah, I'm going to run with this with you. The very first person that he would have had influence on. How do you think that relationship ended up being played out in a manner that fed into something? Is that person kind of part of a similar delusion and they just got lucky and met each other? Or is this guy is this person thinking, hey, I'm your homie, so because that, in your best interest, I believe I'm just going to go with this and kind of give you a pat on the back about it? Or like, how are these people not course correcting these individuals? Like that very first person where it all begins. That's the person I'm so interested about. Like, in your experience, like, do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Well, how about this? Have you ever heard a song where you were so fucking positive you knew the lyrics, and then later on down the road you were like, fuck, I was wrong for like 30 years?
There, yeah.
Were you delusional? Were you feeding into a delusion? Or were you just wrong?
I 100% hear what you're saying, but now, I mean, we're talking about like defying the physiological laws that our universe stands on.
I'll give you another example.
Okay, hit me.
So how about this? I'm going to run you through something that I do often. All right. So I'm going to simultaneously fuck you up mentally, but at the exact same time teach you about martial arts business. All right. Now, granted, literally, listen to what I just said. I told you what I'm about to do. Okay? So, have you ever been to a free trial martial arts class?
Actually, honestly, no. I just signed up and I went for it. full tilt.
Okay. All right. Well, let's say you were about to come to my school. Do martial arts schools cold call you? Have you ever been randomly picked up a phone? No, because you pursue martial arts schools. They don't pursue you. You already know you want the product they're selling, right? So I want to walk you through just an experiment, and I want you to walk with me for a second,
Okay,
right?
I'm ready.
There are a few parameters. All right. So hold on one second. All right, cool. All right, guys. So here's how this is going to go. You already want to, go to my martial arts facility. You already want to go. All right. So that means you called me in order to be here. You want to be here. That is your entire purpose, is to be at the facility, right? Those parameters are important in this exercise, right? So if we did it any other way, you could just be a dick the entire time, right? But we understand that you already wanted to be here. All right.
Yes,
so
okay, agreed.
Let's say I called you two times. I've already called you. The first time I called you was when you signed up, whether it be a free trial or a paid trial for a martial arts school. You signed up and I gave you a follow-up call. And I was like, hey, I noticed that you called. I noticed that you really wanted to come to our facility, come to our class. Let's get you scheduled for a class. And then I scheduled you. The second time I called you was to follow up. Hey, just making sure that you're available for our class that you signed up for Tuesday, 7 p.m. Are you still good? Yes. Awesome. We got you there. All right. Here's all the things you need to be there. Now you're walking through the front door. All right. Let's start there. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Living the dream, man. I love my job. What brings you in today?
Well, I've always wanted to have a deeper understanding of how to defend myself, if I was in a sticky situation.
Oh, wow. Is that something you've been thinking about doing for a while?
Yeah, pretty much since I was a kid.
Wow. Holy shit. Why didn't you start before now?
You know what? I couldn't really afford to tack on another membership, but I'm at a place now in my career where I can.
That's awesome. So what do you do for a living?
Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. I have a couple businesses,
Oh, that's dope. So do you work from home or do you work from an actual location?
A little bit of both.
Okay, that's cool. So are you coming from home or are you coming from a location?
Coming from home this time.
Dope. I love fucking working from home. That is the best shit ever. Like, I live like
Right.
2 minutes down the road. All I have to do is like get on my bike. I bike here. I get a little cardio in right before. All right. Well, since you're in here right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of walk you through how this is going to go. I'm going to give you a tour of our facility. And most people who sign up, they usually train about 2 to 3 times a week. It sounds like you might have a little bit of that. Or would you be able to train about 2 to 3 times a week?
Yeah, at least.
Okay, cool. I mean, you could do more. I mean, it's unlimited classes, but you're more than welcome to do so. And then, what are you trying to get out of being here? What are your ultimate goals?
Skill acquisition, maybe a little side of fitness.
I gotcha. That's cool. And you have the support of your family to do this? Like, they're not going to be like pissed off because you keep showing up to class all the time?
Nah.
Okay, that's good. All right. So I don't even need to go any further. 75% more likely to sign up at my martial arts program. By the time you leave, you will sign up based off of that conversation. Do you want to know why?
Well, I mean, I'm going to say logically, just because I'm keen. I have flexible income, and I'm not deterred by family members. And you also related to me on entrepreneurship and working at home.
Close. Very close. So there are something called the 5 objections. When people go to sign up at your martial arts facility, they will almost always give these 5 objections instead of the word no. They'll say, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, it's too far away, I have to talk to my spouse, or I have to think about it. Mm-hmm. You can't tell me those things anymore. Why can't you tell me you don't have the time?
Because I said I work for myself.
Not that, and you already said you could commit to 2 to 3 times a week.
I said, yeah, you're right. I said at least 2.
Yeah. Why can't you tell me you don't have the money?
Because I already expressed that openly, that I can now afford to add another membership.
Why can't you tell me it's too far away?
Well, I never mentioned anything about the distance or commute or anything.
You didn't have a problem with it, and clearly you came from home, which can't be that far away because you never talked about it being an issue. Why can't you tell me you have to talk to your spouse about it?
Because I said I didn't even mention a spouse. There was no issue when you asked me.
You said there was no issue, all right? And then why can't you tell me you have to think about it?
Because I already said, I've been thinking about it since I was a kid.
Exactly. So literally you just, like in that conversation, statistically 75% more likely to join my martial arts facility.
Mm-hmm.
Whose idea was it for you to join at that point? Because if it sucked, well, you think it's yours. That's the point. When you go to leave let's say hypothetically, you go to leave a convenience store, not even a convenience store, a grocery store, right? When you get to the end of the grocery store and you go to the aisle, what's always there at the aisle?
Oh, it's all the little shit you didn't actually go there to buy.
Sometimes, and sometimes it's shit that's literally more expensive than if you bought it in the store. Sometimes there's like a soda machine right there, right? There's like a little fucking refrigerator.
Yeah.
So whose idea was it to buy it? Because if it was your idea, you probably would have bought the case of soda inside the store and not the 2-liter bottle that is way more expensive.
Yeah, it was the power of
Someone smarter than you. Exactly. Someone smarter than you figured out that if you walk around a store all the time for like an hour trying to get all your groceries, you might want something for the road. If it was your idea, you would have gotten it in the store where it was cheaper and you would have gotten more of them. That pack of gum, you could have bought a case of gum. That one soda, you could have bought a case of soda.
Yeah.
But you didn't do that. So why did you do it at the counter? You did that because someone smarter than you manipulated you into believing it was your idea. That's how advertisement works. So sometimes we all can be fooled by someone. If there's a sucker born every minute, there's a con artist born every 5. So if we really believe that we're in charge of absolutely all of our decision making, we're deluded. We can all be manipulated. We can all be taken advantage of. When we talk to psychologists and cult experts and we spoke with them about like what makes people more susceptible to falling into a cult-like behavior, they said 3 things. All 4 people, without pre-framing them, without telling them any information about our previous conversation, they all said the same things. They said people who were more likely to fall victim of a cult. 1, people who were more educated. Isn't that wild? Why? Because they get indoctrinated into education. You started off in pre-K. Then you went to kindergarten. Then you did your elementary school, which is also part of kindergarten. Then you went to middle school. Then you went to high school. Then you did your 8 years to get your doctorate degree. And then when you get out, your whole life has been school. So what do? You find more school, continued education. You go to the Tony Robbins seminar. You go to the Gary Vee seminar. You're looking for a guru because your entire life has been education.
Wow.
The next thing that they said was people who have money. People who have a lot of money typically fall victim of cults. And you can look at this example from a documentary on Netflix called Wild Wild Country. A fantastic documentary about a cult. They built a fucking city. Morons don't build cities. Architects, lawyers, people who know the legal system, people who understand how to, engineers. All of these people are highly educated, but they also have a fuckload of money to be able to afford to do that. So we know that for a fact, people who are most likely to fall victims of cults are people who are highly educated and who have a lot of money. And then the final thing that makes you most susceptible to falling victim of a cult is you don't think you can fall victim of a cult.
I was actually going to guess that. I'm like, nah, it can't be. Interesting. So, I mean, damn.
Well, why? Because you think you've outgamed the system. And I can give you an easy way to think about this so that way you can understand that, yes, you can fall victim of a cult. All right, you ready? Here we go. Are you a doctor?
No.
Do you think you could do a better job at open heart surgery than a doctor?
No.
Exactly. Are you a lawyer?
No.
Do you think you'd be better legal counsel for somebody than an actual lawyer?
No.
Are you a chef?
No.
Do you think you'd be better at preparing a chef's worthy meal than a chef?
No.
Are you a con artist?
No.
Do you think you'd be better at understanding a con than a con artist?
Yeah, no.
Exactly. But most people putting those pieces together, they don't think about the fact that a con artist is literally a job.
Yeah.
Those people have studied. Those people have put pieces together. They've worked on this for a long time, manipulating people. So when people don't think they could fall victim of a con, it's so easy to con them. And one of the main reason that I know that more than anything else of my entire life is I lived with a magician for like 2 years. And I literally watched him con and fool people for a living over and over and over and over again, even through basic things like a 3-card Monty. And people would fall for it, and they thought they always would have the better of him. But they didn't study, and they didn't understand that it in itself is a skill and a craft. It'd be like the dude coming off the street, going into a martial arts facility and going, you know what? I could take all y'all. I'm going to be the best professional fighter on the planet because I'm from the streets. I'm undefeated on the streets. And if you've ever been in a martial arts facility, you have seen this guy.
Absolutely.
And we all laugh.
This guy is the quintessential character.
And why do we laugh at him? Because we're educated and he's not. So whenever somebody says, oh, I can't be a victim of a con artist, I think about them the same way I think about that guy from the streets. Because you're not educated, or I'm sorry, that particular person isn't educated, so they think they can game the system. You can't. You're going to get beat up just like that other guy. Just instead, it's going to be your finances, it's going to be your mentality, it's going to be your livelihood, and they're going to take you for every dime you have because you did not take the time to realize there are people who are better at other skills than you.
Fascinating. That's unbelievable, but it's so true. I absolutely love, I mean, clearly this is something that, you know, the subject, you know, so much on, just given kind of how this has become, like you were saying, a full-time thing for you. So did that education about it, understanding it deeper, being able to break it down and explain it to people like myself that just kind of, I mean, I just sort of like bullheadedly go through this going, that's ridiculous, and these people are dumb and blah, blah, blah. You know, like I'm sure that you talk to a lot of people who come in with that mentality. So that kind of education process that you've had to sort of like dissect and understand and also break it down for people, has that kind of come along with it? Like, have you had to go, holy shit, there's way more to this than I thought? And then how did you go about educating yourself? Or was it sort of like tied into the experiences of these people and getting this content sent to you? Like, how did you expand your knowledge on this?
I think I really wanted to care more about learning more when I started getting letters and DMs and messages from people who were victims of martial arts cults. These weren't dumb people. These were like people who were very educated. These were people who had amazing careers with 6-figure salaries, who had families, who were mentors in their communities. And so looking at the fact that they could be manipulated, I was like, well, fuck, man, if these people can be manipulated, anybody can be manipulated. So then it leads down a path of like, well, maybe my original thought process is wrong. And it really is a martial arts mentality. We start martial arts because we start with the premise that we don't know something. That's how we learn anything. Do you want to be a painter? You probably go to somebody who's an artist to learn how to paint better. If not, you're just wandering and hoping. If you want to be a better computer programmer, you go to college, you learn from someone who knows it better than you. If you want to be a better fighter, you go to somebody who's a better fighter than you, but you have to start off from zero. You can't have the ego at first, because that ego, especially with fighting, will get snatched right out of you. And really in fighting in the most brutal way. Because the first time you put gloves on with somebody who knows what they're doing, and not just like a little better than you, not like a little, we're talking outclasses you, and you're left standing there going, motherfucker, I threw maybe 300 shots in this round and nothing landed. You become humbled. You go, there is so much more to this I don't understand, and I am willing to say I don't know. Please teach me. I'll listen to every fucking thing you have to say. There's a lot of people who are not willing, especially even in martial arts, willing to go back to that point because that's such a grind. To go from nothing, to get your ass whooped over and over and over and over again, to eventually being able to dole out ass whoopings is a good feeling. But it's also, you remember what it's like to go through that process, and it fucking sucks. It's not fun. So when martial artists wind up becoming instructors, a lot of martial artists lose that white belt mentality and think that they know best. That's not the case. So many martial arts facilities fail because those martial arts instructors are not willing to understand that they don't know business, so they're not willing to go get a mentor. So many martial artists try to lie on their resume because they don't understand that the resume that they have is good enough. Who gives a fuck if it's good enough for other people? It's good enough for your students, as long as you're good. So many martial artists think that they know better than everyone else. We don't. None of us do. We're all fucking up life just trying to figure out our way forward. When we start to take that into consideration, we can start learning how to be better people. We can go, you know what? There's some shit I don't fucking know. Would you be willing to teach me? The moment we think we got it all figured out is the moment we start to fail, because we never do. There's always some shit to learn.
That's so. It's such a good point. In dismantling the ego and reframing the way you think about things and asking questions of others and asking questions of yourself. That's that's just fantastic wisdom right there. Now, I wanted to ask you a particular question. Have you ever gone undercover, incognites, into one of these facilities that you may have gotten the drop on? Have you ever gone in there, fake mustache, whatever, and just gone in there and just got your belt wet a little bit with some of these people? And then if you did you get busted? That's the follow-up question.
So I'm trying to tell you what story. I'm trying to figure out what story I want to tell you. So how about
I love
this?
that there's a Rolodex of these stories and you're trying to pick one. That's amazing. Okay.
So there is a slight Rolodex. I want to give you some stuff from the documentary we're filming. So I'll give you two stories. So the first one is we actually hired a martial arts fraud, a con artist, to come in and teach a seminar that he thought was 100% on the up and up. I filled the studio full of people who were all trained martial artists for over a decade, no matter what discipline. We had like a 6'4", 200-something pound capoeira guy. We had like a 5'2", like 190, I'm sorry, not 190, 115 pound, like Krav Maga instructor. We had like the gambit. We even had a guy in there who like did some high school wrestling and then just like never did shit in again after that, right? So we had all these different people. And then we had one guy, because we were odd, who was our cameraman, and our cameraman had never trained martial arts a day in his life. Which is great. It's nice to have that there. So I told everybody, I got them all there an hour before the other instructor, the actual instructor, was supposed to show up, and I gave them the spiel. I told them what the bit was. And I said, this guy knows that we're filming a documentary. He knows we're filming a documentary about different martial arts we find interesting. We found his interesting. We would like to film him for our documentary. And he agreed. I said, but what he doesn't know is that all of you are all trained. We're going to keep it that way. If he asks you if you've ever trained, you can say, I have trained a little bit, but don't give him any details. So we're not going to lie to him, but we're not going to divulge anything that he doesn't ask directly. And luckily he never did. But the option was there. But since it was a 2-hour seminar, I said for the first hour, go with it. No matter what he teaches, no matter what he says, don't question it. Pretend it works. And we're all just going to go with it. I said, but for the second hour, I want you to just be yourself. Whatever you would normally say, whatever you would normally do in this situation, be yourself. So for the first hour, the guy comes in and he starts teaching pressure point nonsense. The first probably 30, 45 minutes is what he called revivals, which was if you were knocked unconscious by somebody doing pressure point techniques, that you would know how to revive them with their chi. So we just did that, right? We did like 45 minutes of that. Then he starts talking about how to attack with pressure points. And none of it fucking worked, but we all pretended. I should get a fucking Oscar for this because it was live.
I was just going to say, the Academy Award goes to, I don't know if I could keep my shit together.
So I had to pretend it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. So then after that, though, so when he comes in, though, he's probably 5'7", 5'8". He's pretty decent shaped guy. He's wearing a white t-shirt and he's so confident. I give him credit. Just like he exuded confidence. He owned the room. He walked in. How's everybody doing? Excited to start class. Let's get to it. All right. Who in here has trained martial arts before? Okay. I see a couple people who've trained before. That's awesome. I'm excited. He's bone dry the entire class. He's bone dry. This is a white t-shirt. After the second hour starts, though, I walked around quietly and I was like, second hour started, you can go and be yourself. I gave like the quick little thing. Now, it wasn't strange that I was walking around because clearly I'm also trying to get this film done, so he didn't think anything of it. The second hour rolls around. I didn't expect everyone's hand to raise at the same time, but they all did. Just hands start fucking shooting up everywhere. I was like, God damn it. It's a little aggressive, but we'll see where this goes. So one of the ladies is under Atos Academy. And if you know Atos Academy, it's under Andre Galvo, which is one of the legendary jiu-jitsu practitioners and competitors. Fucking fantastic. Legend in the jiu-jitsu community. His brown belt at the time, who was now a black belt competitor, she raises her hand and she goes, how can you teach this? And he goes, what do you mean? She goes, like, this is never going to work against like a guy like that. And she points at like the 6'4" capoeira guy, and he gets a little nervous. And so I had to like reel it back. I was like, you know what? I understand what you're saying. And so questions started coming out more and more and more. And then all of a sudden he was profusely sweating through this white shirt. None of the questions that were asked were any questions that anyone who's ever taught martial arts before would not be able to ask. I mean, if someone asked you basic questioning, you wouldn't get nervous. You would just answer. But this guy had no answers. He's just sweating. It's a fucking wet t-shirt contest up in here, and he's the winner because he's the only one soaking wet. So he was like, well, let's just bring it back a little bit. Let's bring it back. I have a curriculum. We're kind of getting off base. I want to keep teaching technique. Is there any technique that someone wants to see? And again, I have not pre-planned or staged anything. I'm just going with the flow. Someone in the back goes, what about attack from a knife? And he got so excited. He was so excited. He goes, oh. He goes over to his bag and he pulls out a knife. It's a rubber training knife that's very common when you're working with training or training with knife defense. And he goes, what kind of knife defense would you like to see? And someone in the back goes, what about an upward prison shank? And he's talking about someone holding it like a positive grip, trying to stab someone in the stomach. He walks over and casually hands it to literally the only person in the room who's never trained. That wasn't staged. He just did.
The camera guy.
And I was like, oh, fuck. Well, the camera guy, he didn't know that was a camera guy.
Yeah.
He just, like, we had to pull that guy off a camera because we had an odd number of people and we needed it to be even. Yeah. So camera guy takes the knife and he goes, all right, I want you to go ahead and stab me that way. And he tries to do like a downward X block where he crosses his arms, makes fist, and he tries to hit the guy in the arm in specific pressure points to make him leave the knife or make the knife fall out of his hand. Our camera guy stabbed him 17 times. Every time he tried to stab him, he stabbed his ass. It was the greatest shit ever caught on fucking film. And so, like, but he did it with such confidence. So somebody, again, in the audience, who's actually my apparel guy, thanks, Matt, I appreciate you, brother. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt as well. He goes, wouldn't this work better? And walks up and does like a 2-on-1 grip onto the knife arm of our camera guy. Our camera guy attempts to stab him, but cannot because he's being held by two arms against one. Never stabs Matt one time. And he really is trying. I give him credit. So I was like, clearly that's the answer. The guy who's teaching the seminar goes, oh, no, that's ridiculous because what are you going to do from here? And in my mind, I'm going, bitch, not get stabbed. That's the whole fucking point. I don't want to get stabbed. He didn't get stabbed. You did 17 times. I'm taking his fucking advice. So he goes, what I want to do is I want to get close. And then he just fucking bum rushes our camera guy who has the knife. Just fucking goes after him and does like a body lock. Well, when he body locks him, he doesn't actually control the knife arm. So the knife arm is just fucking willy-nilly free behind his back. So he starts monologuing like a fucking supervillain to Superman. He's like, as you can clearly see, I have complete control of the assailant. Our camera guy, while he was monologuing, was so fucking smart. He didn't actually stab him or touch him with a knife. He pretended to do it, so that way the guy couldn't feel it while he was monologuing, and stabbed him 48 times in the spine. 48 fucking times. Now, that is fucking hilarious. But here's where it gets creepy, which is like the line, the juxtaposition of what I do for a living. Someone in the back of the audience, once again, goes, what happens if you get stabbed in the back? Like you can clearly see that happen. And his honest-to-God answer, not knowing that he was being clowned, not knowing that he was being kind of manipulated a little bit in this situation. I won't even say manipulated. I mean, he could have taught anything. This is literally up to him what he's teaching. Right. But not knowing that these people have at least trained a little bit, his answer to these paying customers, because everybody had to pay to be there for the seminar to make it on the up and up, was, if you don't see the blood, it's not that bad. That was his fucking answer to being stabbed in the back 48 times. He thought these people were paying customers, and that was his answer. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure the first time I get stabbed in the back, I don't need to see it to know that it fucking hurts. Just me, anyway.
And depending on where it was in the back, it's one stab and you're done. Never mind 48.
It could go through your spine itself, and it could paralyze you. It could be through your kidney. It could be through your lung. I mean, it could be like, and literally the knife was up by his neck, so it could have stabbed him in the neck multiple times. This is the delusion that you're working with when doing what I do. So I figured if I'm going to do that experiment, like I told you, I'll tell you 2 of these. What if I was on the other end? What if I set it up the other way, where I completely set up a group of people who had never trained a day in their life for real, but I was the con artist on purpose? Could I fool any of these people? So I watched 3 movies and just stole 3 techniques because anybody could do what I just did. I watched Under Siege 2, stole the technique from Steven Seagal. I watched Miss Congeniality, stole the technique from that. I watched, what was the last one? Enough with Jennifer Lopez. And stole, like, the technique from that movie. Like, the build-up technique. If you've ever seen Enough with Jennifer Lopez, like, there's a build-up to a fight with her ex-husband. So I just took these off of movies. Anybody could do this. They're all horse shit. They don't fucking work. So I had, like, literally a big pad like this, right? And the pad was, like, set up, but it was, like, one of those giant ones that you get in, like, elementary school.
Right.
And on the front of it, I said... Yeah, like on the front of it, it just said like martial arts seminar or something really generic. But under that had all like the shit that I was going to be exposing. So again, I did the opposite experiment. For the first hour of that experiment, I decided, you know what? I'm going to teach bullshit on purpose. Not only that, but the website we made was all bullshit. We left as many red flags as humanly possible in this website. So all of the staff members that we put on the website, staff members from my made up martial arts school, were all stock photos that you can get from online. Clearly stock photos, by the way. The quotes that we put underneath, we put a quote underneath each one of those people. We made up. They're not real quotes. I just said random stupid shit. I'm like, the dragon sleeps with a cold or some shit like that, right? Just like stupid fucking shit. And so... then we made up like a made-up curriculum, like a whole website, whole landing page. And then on the bottom is a sign-up sheet for the seminar. We had 15 people, I think, sign up, 15, 16, something like that, sign up. None of these people have ever trained martial arts a day in their life, which was great because that made my life much easier, right? So they all showed up, and I did the opposite. So for the first hour, I taught them these bullshit techniques, and I ended the seminar and ended that hour with a pressure point knockout where I literally did this to my assistant's forehead, and he got knocked out. Yeah, by the way, that guy deserves a goddamn Emmy because he sold it so well. I sat him up, I crossed his legs, I slapped his back and tried to get the chi back into him. They all were concerned about his health. After I did it, on camera, we hear them gasp, like in unison. They're like, oh my God. Then after that, after he got knocked out, they were going up to him going, hey man, are you okay? Like, holy fuck. Like, they believed it. No shit. All right, well, fuck it. We're alive, so I'm just going to keep pretending. But I told them, hey, go ahead during this first hour, after the first hour was over. They all went and got a water break, which is pretty standard in any seminar. Somewhere in there, you get a water break. So I was like, all right, go ahead and get a water break real fast. But since some of you probably have to leave right after, go ahead and give us your testimonials. So they thought we were there filming. And the reason they thought we were filming before we exposed it was they thought we were doing promotional video for more seminars. They thought I was just doing a promotional video to be able to advertise more seminars. They all signed their waivers. Nobody fucking read the waiver that clearly stated what was going on, thank God. And then they all gave me these testimonials after that hour, and that was the scariest part because they bought it. Every person gave me the most raving reviews. I feel so much safer after this seminar. I feel like I'm so much better off. They just blindly gave me all of these like great reviews.
Wow.
So after that hour, I had them all come back and sit down, and I had one person who was a plant. And that person who was a plant was taking the seminar like everybody else. but she herself was a victim of martial arts cults. She had to go through a pretty I'm not going to give her out her shit right now, but she had to go through some pretty horrific stuff during a martial arts cult. So I sat them all down and said, all right, guys, go ahead and come back to the mat. Go ahead and sit down. And I said, what if I told you that everything I just taught you the last hour was complete bullshit and I made it up? And they were like, no. I was like, okay. I took that pad that I had and I flipped it over, and all it said was the names of the movies I stole the techniques from. I was like, I got this technique from this movie, this one from this movie, and this one from this movie. I did not have to have any martial arts experience whatsoever to teach you any of this shit. All I had to do, watch these movies and steal that bullshit. That was it. And so they were like so convinced, by the way, and so ingrained in just an hour that they argued with me. They were like, no, I felt it. It was real. Even though I showed them definitive proof. Remember we were talking about cognitive dissonance earlier? Mm-hmm. This is what that is in real time. In just an hour. Which, by the way, I'm in the wrong fucking business. I need to start a goddamn cult. Like, I'm great at the shit. So I eventually, some person was like, well, that wrist lock you showed really hurt. And I found the smallest woman there. She's probably 110 pounds. And I white-knuckled. I have our cameraman zoom in really close. I was like, you can see my hands going white, right? And I was like, when I go to do this wrist lock, I just want you to pull your hand away. Which would be a very natural reaction in a fist fight. You fucking not let people touch you. If someone grabs you, you're pulling. So I go to do the wrist lock, and as soon as I do it, she's able to get her hand away every time. Somebody was like, oh, that sweep you showed us, that works. I was like, just put your fucking foot down. I was like, I literally convinced you to drown in shallow water. I was like, when I go to do the sweep from that movie Enough with Jennifer Lopez, just put your foot down. And they put their foot down. They were like blown away. And then I had the lady who was there, who was the plant, tell her story about how she was in a martial arts cult for years and how she was manipulated. Then eyeballs started opening up. They were like, holy fuck, this is a thing. So then that last hour, I taught them a legitimate self-defense seminar. I made them spar. I made sure that they were learning actual technique. I taught them super basic day one shit. They learned how to break fall. They learned a rear naked choke. They learned a guillotine. They learned some basic striking. And then I made them spar. And they were covered in sweat after the second hour. After that hour, I asked them to give me real testimonials. I was like, all right, now that you know what happened, I want you to give me your real testimonial about the entire situation. And they were so much more grateful that I fooled them at first because they learned so much more about being conned than they ever did about martial arts. And they realized how easy it was for them to be fooled. You can fool anybody with enough confidence. It's not that difficult to do. How many times have you dated, or anyone ever dated someone where you're like, this is the one, and then you learned all this bullshit about them afterwards? They conned you. You were conned, right? Are you the same person on date 1 that you are on date 10? You're fucking not, right? You want to make a good impression. I'm not going to fart in front of you. Like,
yeah, it's like a job interview. It's just like, let me sell you on myself and why you need me and why I'm the best person. Yeah. Fuck, that's crazy. So now, is this going to be part of your documentary? Like these two situations you just described, that's in your documentary. And when can we expect to see this? Because I am enthralled.
So we started the documentary roughly about 3.5 years ago. The only problem with that is that when we started with a concept. How are we going to fund it? And then that took us a little bit of time to figure out. I made the announcement, hey, I'm going to do this documentary. My problem is I'm so transparent, people don't believe how transparent I am. So, like, I told them, I was like, yo, we're going to make a documentary. Let us figure out how. And then I'm like, all right, we figured out how, which is like 3 months later. We figured out how we're going to crowdfund all the tiers and all that. We're going to release this during like a Conor McGregor fight. We did, which was like 3 months later. So we're already 6 months in from concept to being able to launch crowdfunding. Then crowdfunding lasts an extra 90 days because Indiegogo will only allow you, at least at that time, I don't know if it's the same, only allow you to crowdfund your project for 90 days. So 90 days goes by, which is a fucking nightmare in itself. That's a completely different story. I don't want to talk about this shit. But we crowdfund. Then after we crowdfund, we got $20,000 out of the $200 we were trying to raise. All right, well, we got $20,000. Is that something we can work with? Fuck it. I put in 20 of my own money. Now we have 40. Is that enough? Luckily, my production team was like, you know what? Fuck it. We'll do it for free. And then I had to pay them for like basic standards, right? I had to pay for like hotels, had to pay for flights, had to pay for food, had to pay for like any extra equipment, anything like that, which was about what it would cost for what we had. They sacrificed so much. My production team is the fucking shit because they did it because they believed in the project. Like, that was it. They just believed in it, and so did I. And so do I. So do they. So then we wind up filming, but the problem was we were like, all right, well, let's go ahead and film on this time and date. It's not like we can just all drop our careers and jobs. I could, but they couldn't, because this is what I do for a living. But they couldn't drop their production team and drop all their production meetings just because I have a movie idea. So finally, they were like, you know what, in about 3 months, we'll all be prepared. We'll set aside the time to be able to film. A month before we're about to film, COVID hits. Well, if anybody knows anything about COVID, the world stopped, especially martial arts studios and gyms. It's very hard to film a movie about a martial arts studio when they're all fucking closed.
Yeah.
So then we were like, all right, well, we got to push this back. What turned it, if anybody remembers, I remember specifically because of the movie, we were told 2 weeks to stop the curve. That was the title.
Flatten
2 weeks
the
to stop
curve.
Flatten the curve, right? 2 weeks. 2 weeks is fucking bullshit because that turned into 2 years. Well, during that time, we had a couple times where we were like, all right, well, some of the regulations are dropping. Maybe we can get in there, but we have to film in California. Their production studio was in Fresno. California had the strictest COVID regulations in the country. So we're like, motherfucker. Finally, we got to a point about 2 years in. We were like, all right, we need to make a decision. We either need to give people their money back and just squash this idea because we don't know how long this is going to last, or we need to say, fuck them, and we're going to do it anyway. We said fuck them because that's my energy. We wind up doing the goddamn thing anyway. We wind up finding a time and date that a little bit of time opened up. We filmed for 3 months last year, January through March, which, by the way, doubled what we could afford, but we did it anyway because fuck them. Then we filmed, and we got such incredible footage. We got past that. We're like, all right, what do we do with the footage? We have enough for a series, but we probably want to make a movie. Then from a movie, we can turn that into a series. I wound up having a friend. His name's Jonathan Sadowski. Jonathan Sadowski is a great producer. He was in the movie The Goods. He also is a really well-known producer. He did 8-Bit Christmas. So he's done a lot of stuff in Hollywood. He goes, hey, man, I got an idea. I have a guy who's a director. He might be able to help you guys out. That director comes in, completely changes our entire landscape. Then we're no longer looking at this like we used to. We're like, you know what? We wanted a $200,000 movie. We could only afford 40. He brought in, when he came in, he was like, no. What you have is an $800,000 film. What you need to do is treat it like that. Here's the steps to do it. So now we got picked up by UTA. UTA is one of the biggest talent agencies in the world, top 3. Then, on top of that, he got us introduced to a couple other people within the agency to be able to help us move forward.
Wow.
And now we have a new EP. I can't tell you who the executive producer is. This is literally only a couple weeks past. I can give you 2 hints. He's in San Diego. He has a giant fucking podcast. He agreed to come on to our production team and become an executive producer.
Wow.
Now that he has agreed to come on board, he also gave us a very lovely investment. It's not a donation. He's getting money back. But he gave us a lovely investment. But with his name, now we can look forward to being able to put out our film at the film festivals this next year with what he's allowed us to do, because now we can finish our movie the way we want to. Because, again, we had to film during COVID. So some of that, like, it ages it. It doesn't make it as good.
Yeah.
We couldn't do some things in person. Now, all of the extra footage that we really need to finish up this movie, we can because he's coming on board. It's fucking massive. So we're looking forward to getting that into the film festivals this next year. I'm sorry if I went through the entire process, but I feel like so many people have waited so long. It was important to let them know.
No, absolutely. I mean, and even just like we can relate, to your pains of one, COVID, like we're in the event space, and 2, in the boxing space. We were shut down almost completely until we decided to do a pay-per-view only show, which, no one makes their money back on that when you're a startup promotion in Canada. So, like I can totally, empathize with that process. And also just like, seed runs and trying to raise money to follow your dreams and to build something that is fucking dope. So I'm super, super happy to hear that full story, because the end nugget is worth the initial struggles for sure.
It's funny you mentioned like the pay-per-view only thing. Ironically enough, people don't know who started that. There's like one guy who started the pay-per-view only show. Literally Save Combat Sports. Like Save Sports in general. His name is Mitchell Chamali. Mitchell Chamali runs a thing called Combat Night. And at one point in time, he was literally the only 2 events on TV that were sports related. Because he figured out how to get around the rules and regulations of COVID. He did such a good job of running his MMA promotion during COVID times that he had a meeting with Dana White. Wow. And Dana White literally adopted how he did what he did. And then the entire combat sports arena changed because of Mitchell Chamali. He deserves so much fucking credit that he never gets. He was the first guy to realize, you know what? Fucking audience. Let's just film it and put it online. And he did it. And it was incredible.
Wow. Yeah. It definitely changes the landscape of what you can do when you can't have a live audience. And, for smaller businesses, like ourselves, we're hoping to build that audience. And once you because the potential of the pay-per-view only is that anyone in the world can access it. And so it has massive potential. You just have to get to a place where people know your name enough that they want to spend what starts as $30 on your production. You hope you don't look like shit, to like 60, 80, like you're spending for pay-per-view UFC now. But so I'm going to talk on behalf of Empire Boxing. Like I'm going to be watching your doco. Like I cannot wait. And I think that you're an incredible kind of warrior for combat sports on many levels. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I didn't really know what to expect from this podcast. And I couldn't be more pleased with all the knowledge you've imparted and everything that I've learned, and the way that you kind of express and explain from also a very it doesn't feel judgmental. You're not like, we didn't like rip a strip off anyone like we did, but also you have a way of explaining it that makes it approachable. It gives a lot of mercy to the people that are caught into it. And I think that's important, because for a lot of us, like I know myself, I'm looking through this Instagram page, I'm thinking, these idiots, and that's just not fair. That's not a fair assessment. And I'm imagining that I'm in the majority there of people that are looking at that and going like, come on, like that couldn't be me. So kudos to you for really, bringing a neutral and empathetic, but also educated perspective on this whole idea of tomfuckery and cultism in martial arts. And then you come by it honestly, you're a martial arts man yourself. And I think that's fucking cool.
That's how I got so pretty today.
Yeah. Hey, we've all got, actually, I got a nice little filter going on here. I was going to say, I got a big old scar and it ain't straight anymore either. Listen, Rob, it was such a pleasure to chat with you. I think you're just an incredible person. And I feel super honored that you took the time to chat with me on this podcast.
Any excuse to talk shop is a good excuse. I don't give a shit what the reason is, but it's been great. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to have a platform to talk about what I do. It's funny because the only reason I have a platform is because of other people giving a fuck that I exist. If people didn't care what I do, I would have no followers. I would have nobody who looked into what I do. I'd have no podcast to go on to. And so for people like yourself and the promotion that you're with to allow me to have a platform to talk shop and hopefully educate the masses in some way, shape, or form, or at least give them something to think about. I'm sure there's somebody out there right now who absolutely hates their life, living in their mother's basement, who goes, that fucking guy, I can't stand here to ask. Well, fuck you too. But at the same time, everybody who actually listens, thank you so much for the opportunity, because I absolutely love martial arts. I think that is a life-changing thing. It's something that can make you a better person if you look at it that way. I don't think that it cures everything. I don't think it makes everybody better, but I think it makes a lot of people better. And because of the majority, that's why I do what I do.
Excellent. Well, we would love to have you come to one of our events one time. Sit ringside, maybe hop on as a guest commentator. So we'll keep in touch, and this episode we're going to send you. We'll send you some of those real clips to our Jason. Our guy does such an incredible job. You've seen the production; it's it's really nice. And we would love to have you, share some of these bits and let's continue to support each other. And again, thank you so much for your time. You're a fascinating guy. You seem like a good dude, out there as a warrior for it. And I'm just really honored to be able to speak with you. So thank you so much for coming on the Empire Boxing, podcast, talking to just the old Coach Jay over here. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Okay, man. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been another episode, a very special episode, a fucking cool episode of the Empire Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Jay, and we're going to thank Rob from McDojo Life. Go follow him if you don't already, and have a good laugh, but also think about what you're seeing and think about the impact of what you're seeing as well. And that's what I'm going to take away from this episode for sure.
All right. Appreciate you.
Make sure to listen, follow, and subscribe to Empire Boxing on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube.